When you think of controversial moments in Clinton family history, you likely start with the impeachment crisis over Monica Lewinsky that nearly destroyed Bill Clinton's presidency. The special prosecutor, the lies under oath, the national embarrassment. It seemed like rock bottom for presidential scandals. Or perhaps you'd go with Hillary Clinton's deleted emails and the FBI investigation that haunted her presidential ambitions. However, one diabolical scandal you may not have heard about, or at least don't remember, is when the Clintons orchestrated arguably the most corrupt abuse of presidential pardon power in American history. You see, while most Americans watched George W. Bush's inauguration preparations, Clinton was frantically signing pardons for 140 criminals, including a billionaire tax fugitive. Thus, in today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we uncover how the Clinton family transformed the White House into an auction house where freedom went to the highest bidder. January 20th, 2001 began with Bill Clinton still signing pardons as George W. Bush prepared for inauguration. The outgoing president had spent his final night in office reviewing clemency requests instead of sleeping. 176 acts of clemency would flow from his pen before noon, nearly a third of all he granted in 8 years. Roger Adams, the Justice Department's pardon attorney, had already thrown up his hands weeks earlier. He publicly announced his office would no longer accept applications, telling pardon seekers to bypass his department entirely. The breakdown of normal procedures was so complete that Adams essentially declared the Justice Department irrelevant. 47 people who received clemency that morning had never filed proper applications with the Justice Department. Some had been previously denied pardons by Clinton himself during calmer times. Others weren't even qualified under Justice Department rules that had governed clemency for decades. In the White House, chaos reigned as the pardon attorney frantically prepared paperwork. Names were misspelled, addresses unknown, files missing or already boxed for shipment to Arkansas. Clinton had been notoriously stingy with pardons throughout most of his presidency. His clemency rate was among the lowest of any modern president until Hillary launched her Senate campaign. The timing wasn't coincidental. Pardons suddenly became political currency in 1999. Internal White House documents would later reveal staff discussing the political benefit of certain clemencies. One memo specifically noted that releasing Puerto Rican terrorists would have a positive impact among strategic Puerto Rican communities in the U.S., red voters. The president who had pardoned so few suddenly couldn't sign clemencies fast enough. Among those receiving last-minute mercy was Susan McDougal, Clinton's Whitewater business partner. She had spent 21 months in jail for refusing to testify about the Clintons before Kenneth Starr. Patricia Hearst Shaw, the kidnapped heiress turned bank robber, also made the list. Clinton even pardoned his own half-brother Roger for a 1985 cocaine conviction. These personal pardons attracted attention, but they paled compared to what investigators would soon discover. The real scandal involved billionaires, international fugitives, and family members collecting cash. Federal prosecutors in New York were about to open criminal investigations. Congressional committees would issue subpoenas for financial records and testimony. Clinton's final day had created a scandal that would define his post-presidency. His own top advisors would soon testify they had begged him not to grant these pardons, especially the one that would dominate headlines: Mark Rich. Mark Rich lived in a Swiss mansion, while American prosecutors called him their most wanted white-collar criminal. The commodities trader had fled to Switzerland in 1983, facing 51 federal counts: tax fraud, mail fraud, racketeering, and illegally trading oil with Iran. During the embargo, prosecutors had built an airtight case. Rich owed more than $48 million in taxes from what investigators called the largest tax fraud case in U.S. history. Prosecutors calculated that Rich and partner Pincus Green had stolen at least $71 million. Their scheme involved selling crude oil at several times the government-regulated price during 1980 and 1981. The money was then shipped overseas to escape American taxes entirely. If convicted, Rich faced 325 years in prison plus massive fines. His name sat on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list for years. Rich had renounced his American citizenship and become Spanish to avoid extradition. Swiss authorities consistently refused US requests to send him back for trial. For 17 years, Rich lived as a fugitive billionaire beyond America's reach. Then, Jack Quinn entered the picture in 1999. Quinn wasn't just any lawyer, he had been Clinton's own White House counsel. His strategy bypassed the Justice Department entirely, going straight to Clinton. Quinn understood that normal channels would never approve a Rich pardon. Mary Jo White, the prosecutor who had originally charged Rich, would have exploded at the suggestion. Instead, Quinn plied his Clinton connections aggressively, according to congressional investigators. He recruited an unlikely ally, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Barak called Clinton on January 19th, the day before the pardon. James Carville later revealed Clinton wanted to help Barak with Middle East peace negotiations. Former White House counsel Beth Nolan testified it was Barak's call that seemed to turn the tide. But federal documents showed Israel had tried this before in 1995. Dennis Ross, Clinton's Middle East envoy, had rejected Israeli requests to ease the Rich manhunt. Ross called it a hot potato and worried about allegations that the administration was interfering with law enforcement. Something had changed between 1995 and 2001. That something involved massive amounts of money flowing to Clinton-connected causes. Denise Rich, Mark's ex-wife, had discovered the power of strategic giving. Between July 1998 and May 2000, she made 3 separate donations. $450,000 went to Clinton's Presidential Library Fund. The timing preceded any public discussion of pardoning her ex-husband. She also gave more than $1 million to Democratic Party candidates. Hillary Clinton's Senate campaign received $100,000. Clinton's legal defense fund got $10,000 more. The Clintons even received $7,375 worth of furniture. Just before the pardon, both Mark Rich and Pincus Green made another pledge. Promised $1 million annually to Denise Rich's cancer charity, $500,000 each. Hugh Rodham deposited $400,000 in his Florida bank account during Clinton's final months. Hillary's brother had no expertise in presidential pardons or criminal law. His regular legal practice involved personal injury cases and real estate transactions. Yet 2 convicted criminals had paid him enormous sums for his pardon lobbying services. Almon Glenn Braswell gave Rodham $200,000 for help with his case. Braswell was a snake oil salesman convicted of mail fraud, perjury, and tax evasion. His herbal remedy business had defrauded desperate customers seeking miracle cures. Federal prosecutors were actively investigating Braswell for new crimes when Clinton pardoned him. The investigation involved money laundering and tax evasion through offshore corporations. Braswell was literally under criminal investigation while receiving presidential mercy. Carlos Vignali's father also paid Hugh Rodham $200,000. Vignali was serving 15 years for dealing cocaine as part of a 30-member drug ring. He had shipped cocaine between Los Angeles and Minneapolis without remorse. The Justice Department formally recommended against commuting Vignali's sentence. Deputy Attorney General Eric Holder confirmed his department recommended against clemency. Clinton ignored his own Justice Department and freed Vignali anyway. Tony Rodham, Hillary's other brother, had his own pardon scheme running. Edgar Allen Gregory Jr. and his wife, Vonna Jo, owned a carnival company. The couple had been convicted of bank fraud in 1982. Tony had met the Gregorys at a Democratic fundraiser in 1995. Their friendship blossomed into a business relationship worth hundreds of thousands. The Gregorys put Tony on their payroll for 2.5 years. They paid him nearly $245,000 in salary. They also lent him another $79,000. Tony even arranged for their carnival to set up on the White House lawn in 1998. A Ferris wheel and arcade games filled the president's backyard that summer. The House Government Reform Committee investigated Tony's financial arrangements. Their report concluded the most valuable thing that Rodham did for the Gregorys was to obtain presidential pardons. Tony claimed he never received payment specifically for the pardons. "I worked for the Gregorys. I'd been in their employ," he insisted to investigators. The timing suggested otherwise. His highest payments coincided with his pardon lobbying. When news of Hugh's payments broke, the Clintons issued a stunning statement. "Neither Hillary nor I had any knowledge of such payments," Bill Clinton declared. We are deeply disturbed by these reports and have insisted that Hugh return any monies received. Under family pressure, Hugh returned the $400,000. His attorney maintained Hugh had done absolutely nothing wrong. The president's in-laws had turned clemency into a commodity. Roger Clinton was also shopping presidential mercy to potential buyers, though less successfully than the Rodham brothers. Mary Jo White was outraged when she learned about Mark Rich's pardon on January 20th. The U.S. attorney who had originally prosecuted Rich hadn't been consulted about clemency. White immediately opened a criminal investigation into whether Rich had bought his freedom. FBI agents were assigned to determine if federal laws were violated in the pardon process. Grand jury subpoenas started flying within days of Clinton leaving office. James Comey took over the investigation when he replaced White in December 2001. Newly released FBI documents showed Comey was enthusiastic about this investigation. He supports the proposed investigative plan, according to internal FBI communications. Congress launched its own parallel investigations into the pardon scandal. Dan Burton, chairman of the House Government Reform Committee, issued sweeping subpoenas. He demanded financial records from Denise Rich's banks. Democratic National Committee donation records were subpoenaed. Clinton Library Foundation documents came under congressional scrutiny. White House visitor logs were requisitioned to track access. The CIA and Defense Intelligence Agency were ordered to provide their Mark Rich files. Beth Nolan, Clinton's White House counsel, was called to testify. Bruce Lindsay, deputy White House counsel and Clinton confidant, faced congressional questioning. John Podesta, Clinton's chief of staff, was summoned before the committee. Jack Quinn, Rich's attorney, had to explain his circumvention of normal procedures. The most dramatic moment came when Denise Rich was called to testify. She arrived with her attorney but refused to answer questions. Rich invoked her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Her attorney told the committee she had done nothing wrong. He acknowledged she had donated an enormous sum of money to Clinton's library. Both Rich and the Clinton Library refused to disclose specific contribution details. Committee Chairman Dan Burton called her silence very, very troubling. He sought immunity from the Justice Department to compel her testimony. The refusal to testify heightened suspicions about the pardon's legitimacy. Jimmy Carter weighed in with devastating criticism of his fellow Democrat. "I don't think there is any doubt that some of the factors in his pardon were attributable to his large gifts," Carter said. "In my opinion, that was disgraceful." Carter noted he had pardoned about 500 people during his 4 years. None received clemency during his final weeks in office. "I never pardoned anyone whose pardon was not recommended to me after a complete investigation by the Justice Department," Carter emphasized. Clinton's own advisors turned against him during congressional testimony. Bruce Lindsay revealed he had opposed the Rich pardon entirely. "In my judgment, the fact that they were fugitives was the beginning and the end of the discussion," Lindsay testified. John Podesta expressed shock at Clinton's decision to pardon Rich. "I had the sense he had accepted our judgment and that this wouldn't happen," Podesta said. Beth Nolan confirmed she too had advised against the pardon. Eric Holder's admission of regret would haunt his confirmation hearings 8 years later when Obama nominated him for Attorney General. Almon Glenn Braswell was actively committing federal crimes while Clinton signed his pardon. Los Angeles prosecutors were investigating him for money laundering through offshore accounts. The investigation also covered millions in tax evasion using shell corporations. Clinton's pardon created legal confusion about which crimes were covered. The Justice Department had to clarify the pardon only applied to Braswell's 1983 conviction. Prosecutors continued their investigation of his current criminal activities. 3 years later, Braswell pleaded guilty to conspiring to evade millions in corporate taxes. He received an 18-month prison sentence in 2004. Hugh Rodham's $200,000 client had gone right back to crime. The pattern extended beyond Braswell to other controversial clemency recipients. 16 members of FALN, a Puerto Rican terrorist group, received commutations in August 1999. These terrorists had set off 120 bombs across the United States. White House documents revealed staff saw political benefit in their release. Strategic Puerto Rican communities would view the commutations favorably before Hillary's Senate race. Carlos Viñali never admitted guilt or cooperated with law enforcement. The cocaine dealer maintained his innocence despite overwhelming evidence. His wealthy father had donated more than $160,000 to various politicians. 9 prominent political figures contacted the White House supporting Viñali's. The drug dealer walked free after serving just 6 years of a 15-year sentence. Roger Clinton compiled a list of 6 friends he wanted pardoned. The president's half-brother promised them he could deliver clemency. Federal prosecutors investigated whether Roger sought $15,000 for a pardon. Philip David Young, a restaurant owner convicted of transporting illegal game fish, received the offer. Young rejected the $15,000 demand, but got pardoned anyway. None of Roger's other friends received the clemencies he had promised. It sort of caused a rift. My feelings were hurt, Roger later complained. The president had pardoned his own brother, but ignored Roger's recommendations. Eric Holder's role in the scandal tainted his future career. As Deputy Attorney General, Holder told the White House he was neutral, leaning toward favorable on Rich. He claimed supporting the pardon might help U.S. foreign policy objectives. Later testimony revealed Holder's regret about his involvement. Knowing everything that I now know, would not recommend to the president that he grant the pardon, Holder admitted. Critics argued Holder could not say no to power when pressured. The systematic breakdown went beyond individual cases to institutional failure. Clinton had created an ad hoc procedure in the White House counsel's office. This shadow system identified pardon candidates while bypassing Justice Department expertise. Pardon seekers besieged the president and his staff throughout fall 2000. Rumors flew about deals and promises involving influential insiders. The final tally would reveal over $1,700,000 flowing from pardon recipients to Clinton causes and family members. Barney Frank, one of Clinton's fiercest defenders during impeachment, called the pardons a real betrayal. The liberal congressman added a single devastating word: contemptuous. Terry McAuliffe, Clinton's own fundraiser, publicly called the pardons a mistake. Republicans had fresh ammunition after surviving the Lewinsky scandal and impeachment. Dan Burton led aggressive investigations, calling the pardons sleazy at every opportunity. Democrats found themselves in the impossible position of defending the indefensible. The contrast between those pardoned and those denied revealed Clinton's priorities. Leonard Peltier, the Native American activist, was denied clemency despite international support. FBI agents had actually marched to protest, even considering Peltier's case. Jonathan Pollard, the Navy analyst convicted of spying for Israel, received no mercy. Michael Milken, the junk bond king, was passed over entirely. Webster Hubbell, Hillary's former law partner from Whitewater, didn't make the list. Wealthy donors and connected insiders succeeded where those with legitimate cases failed. Clinton himself eventually acknowledged the damage to his legacy. He called the rich pardon terrible politics and one of his biggest mistakes. The admission came too late to salvage his reputation. No criminal charges resulted from the extensive federal investigation. Despite Comey's enthusiasm and grand jury proceedings, prosecutors couldn't prove bribery. The constitutional breadth of pardon power made criminal prosecution nearly impossible. Congress issued scathing reports but had no power to reverse the clemencies. Some scholars called for constitutional amendments requiring Senate consent for pardons. Others defended broad clemency power as protection against prosecutorial overreach. The scandal's impact extended far beyond Clinton's presidency. Future presidents became extraordinarily cautious about controversial pardons. George W. Bush and Barack Obama issued far fewer clemencies than historical averages. The word pardon itself became politically toxic after Clinton's actions. Clinton had been among the stingiest presidents with clemency until 1999. Hillary's Senate campaign marked the turning point when pardons became currency. 456 people received clemency during Clinton's 8 years. 176 of those came on his final day in office. The mathematical proof of corruption was overwhelming to observers. Hugh Rodham collected $400,000 before returning it under pressure. Tony Rodham received $324,000 in salary and loans. Denise Rich donated $450,000 to Clinton's library. She gave another $1 million+ to Democratic candidates and causes. The Clintons received over $100,000 in campaign contributions. Mark Rich and Pincus Green pledged $1 million annually to charity after the pardon. The Clinton pardon scandal created a template for future corruption. Questions about the Clinton Foundation's operations echoed Pardongate's patterns. Pay-for-play allegations would follow the Clintons through subsequent controversies. The family business model of monetizing political access was established. Constitutional mercy had been perverted into a final presidential shopping spree. The damage to democratic norms and public trust proved incalculable and permanent. And now, we'd like to see you in the comments. What is your opinion on the Clinton family legacy? Is it too filled with murky stories like this? Or should they be seen as politicians who tried their best to make a better America? We look forward to hearing your thoughts. And with that said, thanks for joining us for another episode of Old Money Luxury. Cheers.